Alright, let's start with introduction. Industrial relations refers to the relationship between employers and employees, especially in terms of rights, responsibilities, and fairness at the workplace. In Malaysia, this relationship is protected through labor laws and the principles of the industrial courts, which exist to prevent exploitation and abuse of workers. This case involved a small food service restaurant located in Surigombak, Selangor, which operates within the F&B industry. The restaurant employed a migrant worker, Safiuddin Bakir Mohammed, as a cook to support its daily operation. However, several industrial relation issues arise during his employment. Safiuddin experienced the withholding of wages, the taking of his passport by employer, and the failure of the employer to provide proper accommodation. The situation later gained national attention when he was found sleeping outside Ambeng branch in Taman Maluri, Kuala Lumpur, where he was publicly humiliated. This incident shows the harsh reality faced by some migrant workers in Malaysia and raised serious concerns about employer misconduct. Under the principles of industrial court, employers are required to act in good faith and ensure timely payment of wages. This principle was clearly affirmed in High Court decision involving 93 migrant workers, where the employer was ordered to pay unpaid wages despite claiming that work had not yet commenced. The court ruled that wages are payable once workers are brought into Malaysia under an employment arrangement. Therefore, this case will be analysed in relation to Malaysian labour law, industrial court principle, and relevant codes of conduct and ethical guidelines to determine whether the employer's action violate the rights of the worker.
These slides explain the industrial relation issue involved in this case. Firstly, withholding occur when employee fail to pay the worker salary, which is a clear violation of basic employment right. Secondly, passport confiscation restricts the worker's freedom to leave or change job, showing an abuse of power by employer. The case also highlighted migrant worker vulnerability, where foreign workers lack sufficient legal and social protection, making them more exposed to exploitation. Due to poor living conditions and lack of employee support, the worker became homeless, reflecting serious neglect of worker welfare. In addition, the physical abuse faced by the worker shows a failure of workplace and social protection system. This situation is worse by weak enforcement of labor law, allowing such mistreatment to continue.
As I will explain the prevention under the Employment Act 1950. The main issue identified is the late payment of wages, which fall under Section 18. According to this section, employers are required to pay wages within the agreed wage period. In this case, the employer failed to honor the contractual wage period, resulting in delayed salary payment to the employee. To prevent this issue from happening, employers should establish a fixed payroll schedule, ensuring that wages are paid no later than 6 days of the following month. If the employer fails to comply with the Section 18, they may be liable to a fine of up to 1000 for each offence, and the Labour Court may also order the employer to pay all outstanding wage owed to the employee. As under the Industrial Relations Act 1970, the issue involved is unfair dismissal, which is governed by Section 20. In this case, the employer's failure to address the wage issue fairly and to comply with statutory obligation result in the employee being dismissed without just cause or excuse. The employer did not follow proper procedure or provide a reasonable basis for the dismissal. To prevent unfair dismissal, employers should first provide a proper grievance procedure allowing employee to raise dissatisfaction or workplace issue. Failure to comply with Section 20 may result in the court ordering the reinstatement of the employee. As under under the Industrial Relations Act 1970, the issue involved is unfair dismissal, which is governed by Section 20. In this case, the employer's failure to address the wish issue fairly and to comply with statutory obligation result in the employee being dismissed without just cause or excuse. The employer did not follow proper procedure or provide a reasonable basis for the dismissal. To prevent unfair dismissal, employers should first provide a proper grievance procedure allowing employee to raise dissatisfaction or workplace issue. Failure to comply with Section 20 may result in the court ordering the reinstatement of the employee.
We're going for the second common law, which is duty to treat employees with respect and trust. The issue here is resignation and termination. Common law instructed reasonable notice for termination unless misconduct justifies summary dismissal, and blocking resignation breach distrust, which can enable remedies such as reinstatement or payouts. In this case, the employer breached the mutual trust by coercion, which will allow the employee to claim remedies in the court. The restaurant employer should standardize procedures that mirroring common law equity, such as payment in lieu clauses and no retaliation policies, which can reduce industrial court dispute. Company procedures should include standardized resignation forms, 14 to 30-day notice clauses that matching the contract, exit interviews with checkout memo issuance to immigration department. Failure to comply with this, industrial court may give orders for unfair labor practices, back pay for withheld periods, and common law injunctions for specific performance if proven coercive, which can escalate to business shutdown from repeated disputes. And now we are here with the issue withheld wages for months and retain the worker's passport while restricting his ability to resign. The law here is duty to comply with statutory obligations. Statutory duty to comply with Employment Act 1955 and Immigration or Passport Act and Foreign Worker Guidelines are the compulsory for the employer. The employer should implement payrolls control to ensure all salaries are paid no later than the 7th day with automated reminders and dual approvals. The employer should adopt a written policy that passports remain with workers. Safekeeping must be voluntary, documented, and with immediate access. The employer also should train managers on Employment Act 1955 on migrant worker rights and immigration rules while using compliance audits and labor law checklists. Failure to comply with this, the Labour Department may complaints, order to pay arrears, and criminal fines for wage offences, and potential industrial claim for constructive and unfair dismissal and reputational damage, especially after a viral incident. The issue here is worker was not paid his salary, leaving him unable to send money home, which leads to him being homeless. The law here is duty to pay remuneration. Months of withheld wages are a direct breach to the Duty and Employment Act 1955. The employer should have clear written contracts stating wage period, rate, and payment date aligned with the EA 1955. The employer should use HR or payroll system, payslip, and bank transfer to create an auditable trail and reduce cash case excuses. Any missed payroll triggers immediate HR and top management review for internal escalation. Failure to comply with this, the court may orders to pay back wages and fines up to 50,000 ringgit per unpaid or late paid worker, and risk of constructive dismissal claim and industrial court awards and difficulty recruiting workers in the future.
Next, let's talk about an important issue related to workers stuck in Malaysia without regular wages or the freedom to change jobs. This situation is a violation of the basic workers' rights. Under common law, employers are obligated to provide work. If a worker is stuck in this situation where they are not paid and can seek other work, it undermines their dignity and livelihood. To prevent this, employers must ensure they continue paying full wages, reassign duties when necessary, or lawfully end contracts with proper notice and compliance with all dues. Importantly, employers must not block an employee from resigning and should follow the procedures outlined in the Code of Conduct for industrial harmony for consultation and separation. Failure to comply can lead to serious consequences, including court findings against the employer, which leads to compensation for back wages. There's also an increased risk of public and diplomatic fallout if migrants are left stranded. To sum up, it's crucial that both workers and employers follow the law to protect the rights and dignity of everyone involved. And then, let's discuss the legal and ethical responsibility of employers toward workers, especially in situations where a worker may end up homeless, as seen in this case. Under common law, employers have a duty of care to ensure the safety and welfare of their workers. A situation where a worker is left without pay, housing, or the means to leave the country is a violation of that duty. To prevent this, employers must ensure workers have proper housing, or at the very least, safe, lawful accommodation in case of relationship breakdowns. It is also essential to establish grievance channel so workers can report issues before they escalate into homelessness or public abuse. Failure to comply with these standards can result in civil liability if harm is linked to the employer's negligence. It could also lead to regulatory pressures, blacklisting from future migrant worker quota, and significant reputational damage. To sum up, employers must prioritize the safety and welfare of workers to ensure they have the means to live with dignity, even in challenging situations.
This slide explains prevention of passport retention, which is a serious industrial relation issue involving foreign workers. Under Malaysia's Code of Conduct and MOHR guideline, employers are strictly prohibited from holding workers' passport as it violates ethical recruitment practice. Employers should implement clear policies allowing workers to keep their own document, with only voluntary secretaries if requested. Failure to comply may lead to heavy fines, imprisonment, license revocation, and even charges under anti-trafficking laws. Therefore, preventing passport retention is crucial to protect worker rights and maintain fair industrial relations. This slide focuses on prevention of termination issues in industrial relations. Under the MOHR Codes of Conduct on Industrial Harmony, employers are encouraged to prevent disputes through fair termination and proper consultation. Termination should be done without coercion, with timely final salary payment and clear procedures. Employers must also ensure HR is well trained to handle resignation ethically to avoid constructive dismissal claims. Failure to comply may result in fines, mediation, union involvement, and business audits. Therefore, proper termination practices are important to maintain harmonious industrial relations.
Last but not least, Workers' Minimum Standard of Housing and Amenities Act 1990. The issue for this is accommodation and law that involve which Section 3 until 10. The prevention is this act prescribes the minimum housing, accommodation and amenity standard for workers and dependents where employers provide lodging. It is applied nationwide but mainly enforced in Peninsular Malaysia and Labuan by the Labour Department under MOHR. For migrant cooks like Safiuddin, if logging is offered, the company should conduct annual inspections per Section 13 with policy that require written housing agreement detailing amenities to meet Act 446 and prevent homelessness claim. Failure to comply, if the company violate this act, they will get penalties up for 5,000 fine and 6 months jail for the violation. To end our presentation, I will give some conclusion for overall. This case clearly demonstrates a serious violation of workers' rights and labour law in Malaysia. The employer's action has breached several key positions where the Employment Act 1955, Common Law, Codes of Conduct, Industrial Relations Act and Workers' Minimum Standard of Housing and Amenities Act 1990.